Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the brand new Transformers Studio Series Deluxe class Autobot Drift. This is Drift based on his appearance from Age of Extinction when he can transform into a Bugatti Veyron as well as a helicopter. As always, we'll take a quick look at the packaging and then we'll take an extremely detailed look at the figure himself. As with all of these Studio Series packagings, we have a fantastic piece of artwork of Drift based on his appearance from Age of Extinction. This is very reminiscent of the artwork that we saw back in the AOE toy line. It states that this figure is from the Studio Series Autobot Drift and that he is from Age of Extinction. The other side of the packaging has a really cool image of Drift expanded, and this too is the same image that was used across the AOE toy line back in 2014. The back of the packaging showcases the figure in both his robot mode as well as his helicopter mode. It does state that this figure is in fact from the Autobot Reunion, one of the best scenes in Age of Extinction, and it also includes a brief bio. At the sight of Optimus Prime, Autobot Drift dives gracefully off a cliff, converting midair into his helicopter mode to meet him. It also shows that you can in fact build the cast and that Dropkick and Hightower are also included in this assortment. I have taken reviews of both of these figures, so feel free to check their reviews out after this video. And the final side of the package has a larger image of Drift, states that he is figure number 45 and that he is a deluxe class. Now the backdrop that this figure comes with is of Monument Valley. This is obviously the scenery where the Autobots reunite in Age of Extinction and is actually where Drift flips off a cliff and converts into his helicopter alt form, so there's a really nice inclusion with this particular release. As always, you can insert the figure into the diorama for a more dynamic display option, and here we have Drift as he comes packaged in his robot mode. Now this is by far the best representation we've ever got for movie Drift. However, this particular deluxe class figure comes with so many accessories, so before we take a closer look at Drift, we're going to actually take a closer look at Drift's accessories and then we'll take a detailed look at Drift himself. The first accessory that Drift comes with is actually the back section of the helicopter. I'm so glad this particular piece can in fact be removed, as the official images show this fixed on the arm. Some may call it parts forming, but I actually call it a really clever idea. The propeller section unfortunately doesn't actually spin, however you can actually incorporate this into the robot mode via two ways. The first way is essentially giving Drift a shield. There are two tabs on the sides of Drift's arm that will plug onto two tabs that are actually situated on this section. Plugging it in is really simplistic, and if you have Drift wield one of his swords, it definitely does look like a very cool shield, and it's definitely something I can see Drift deploying. Another way you can also attach it to Drift is via these two tabs on the back section. You simply just peg this into the back, and there is weapon storage in robot mode. This to me is my least favourite option, as it makes the backpack incredibly large. And another pair of accessories that the figure comes with, which are mainly also for helicopter mode, are these missile pods. These are cast out of a transparent blue plastic with a really nice black metallic finish, and they really do look very realistic. In robot mode, these essentially tab onto the legs of Drift. This to me isn't a look that I actually prefer, as it can make the legs fairly clunky. However, it is good that Hasbro have in fact included weapon storage nonetheless. Another accessory that Drift also comes with is a pair of swords. These are completely different from the ones that come with the previous Studio Series Drift and have been cast in a metallic dark plastic. These have got no paint applications on them whatsoever and can be implemented into the figure by a plug and port and can sit in there really sturdy. A second alternate way to actually position them on the figure is to have them hilted on the side. There is a small slot and a tab section that is situated on the sword, and plugging them in can be fairly tricky, but once they are in, they definitely do look really well on the figure, and this is the first time that a Drift has actually managed to pull off the sword on the side of his hips. Comparing the swords to the previous version, as you can see, the older version actually has a lot more of a visually appealing look due to the subtle changes with the gold paint apps. On the newer version, there are no paint apps whatsoever, which I do think could have greatly accentuated the details. The older versions are definitely the superior version in my opinion, however the newer versions are also nice. Now taking a look at the figure himself, this is by far the best representation that we've ever got for movie Drift. This figure is very slender and the articulation too is also great, allowing you to get the figure in some very agile poses. The only downside to the silhouette of the figure is the fact that the cockpit does sit on the back section of Drift, however it does compress fairly nicely and doesn't ruin the aesthetic from the front. This figure is also incredibly detailed and sculpted, so let's take a closer look at the details of the figure. Starting off with one of the best assets of the figure is of course his head sculpt. This has been detailed and painted incredibly well. As you can see, the gold crest really does pop, and the blue painted eyes are also a really nice touch. The beard is also picked out in a black paint, and it is great to see that Hasbro is differentiating different parts of the sculpt in order to make it more movie accurate. The torso section is also really cool. As you can see, there are evidence of Bugatti Veyron pieces, however this figure only converts into his helicopter form. I really like the turquoise metallic blue paint they've put on the figure to highlight all of the Drift's armour plating. There is also some really nice gold paint apps on each side of his arms, however these are asymmetrical and is also a really nice touch of detail. There are of course areas which are unpainted, and these two have also been detailed incredibly well. I really also like the lower section of Drift. As you can see, his armour plating also continues, and the main torso section is also extremely busy, much like a movie design, with so many different gears and pistons. If the shins of Drift look familiar, that is because they are in fact reuses of dropkick shins, which I'll do a comparison with later. Turning around to the back of the figure, this too also clears up fairly nicely, other than the fact that you do have a completed cockpit sitting on the back of Drift. However, this is nowhere near as noticeable as it is coming out on camera, and I actually think that the legs also compact extremely nicely in order to aid Drift's articulation. Speaking of articulation, Drift's head is in fact on a ball joint, however it is exceptionally stiff, so can only really look left and right to a fair degree, and cannot hardly look up nor down, and can tilt ever so slightly to side. The arms are however on ball joints, and these are extremely free moving. They can rotate all the way backwards as well as hinge up and down. You could also get a butterfly joint out of the ball joint due to its excellent range of motion. There is also a swivel joint just above the elbow, however this is mainly used for transformation and is very stiff. The elbow joint can bend 90 degrees, however there is no wrist articulation. Due to the way Drift transforms, there is unfortunately no waist articulation, however you do get some excellent ball joints in the legs, allowing for the legs to kick outwards that far, as well as backwards to a fair degree as well. Drift can also do the splits to a really great degree, making this the most articulated Drift figure to date. There is also a full rotation just beneath the knee, and talking of the knees actually have an over 90 degree bend, allowing you to kick Drift up the backside. There is unfortunately no ankle tilt due to transformation, but other than that, the articulation on this figure is great and allows you to get the figure into some fantastic posing. Articulation and detail on this figure definitely make this the best representation of Drift yet. Comparing the head sculpts between the new Drift and the previous Studio Series Drift, they are in fact very different sculpts. This is great, as Hasbro and Takara really could have skimped out, but the most noticeable difference is the fact that Drift's crest section flares out a lot more and the beard is a lot more elongated. This new version of Drift is a lot better than the previous version, as it finally has a brand new mold as opposed to a reuse. Now speaking of reuses, here is the new Studio Series Drift compared to Studio Series Dropkick. Now other than the shin sections, these figures only merely share similarities in transformation, and even the shins look vastly different with Drift's brand new paint deco. As you can see, they are completely different, and the use of transformation is definitely really interesting. Now comparing the new Studio Series Drift to Studio Series Optimus Prime and the previously released Studio Series Drift, as you can see, he is ever so slightly smaller than the previous version of Drift, and that is due to the simple fact that this is a brand new sculpt, meaning that Hasbro and Takara could really get this to scale with the other Studio Series figures, whereas the previous version was actually from the Last Night toy line, where they didn't necessarily take scale into consideration. Despite it being smaller than the previous Drift, I definitely think it scales really nicely with Optimus Prime, and once again is probably the most definitive representation of Drift yet. Now with everything just about covered for Drift's robot mode, let's get Drift into his helicopter alt form. Now as I stated, this definitely does share similarities to Dropkick, however has some new elements. First of all, you're going to want to move the cockpit section ever so slightly down from the back tail rotor. This will then allow you to fold out Drift's arms just like so. So flip the hand sections back on both sides of Drift. What you'll then want to do is rotate these gold armor platings so that they are now aligned with the blue armor of Drift. You're then going to essentially want to rinse and repeat the exact same procedure on the opposite side. So just rotate that section round until you've got the arm situated like this. Once that is done, there is some grooves on the torso section that you're going to want to get your fingernail in and just gently pry them down. Don't yank them out like the instructions state, and then rotate them up just like so. Repeat the same process once again on the opposite side, so rotate this section up just like so. And once this is done, you're now going to want to turn your attention to tiny little black tabs that are situated on the arms of Drift. As you can see here, this small tab here will actually peg into this tab here. What you're going to want to do is rotate the arm as well as hinge the joint down. Once this is done, it's just a matter of fact of lining the plug and pull up, and once that is tabbed in just like so, you are now ready to move on to the opposite arm. So repeat the exact same process on the opposite side, in the sense that you have to line the tab up with the peg. Once this is done, we can now proceed to rotate and collapse the arms in upon themselves. Then you're going to want to hinge the arms up over the top of the head so that we can now begin to line the rear end of the vehicle mode over. Once this is done, you're now going to want to collapse the legs down just like so. This will then allow complete clearance for when you rotate the main torso section around. Rotate these thigh sections back so that the shins are now facing towards the front of the helicopter. Once this is complete, we can completely rotate the whole of Drift's main torso section around, moving the arms out of the way so you don't chip the paint off the head section. This will line up really nicely, and now you will have the front head section of Drift facing towards the top end of the copter. Once this is done, you can see a small section of black tabs on the opposite side of the towel, and there are some tabs on the other side. You're essentially going to want to collapse these upon themselves. There is a main tab that you're going to want to align and snap into place properly first, and once this is tabbed in, this will then allow you to completely close up the towel section of Drift. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this step now, however I do it so that it keeps the towel end completely secure. You're going to want to take the rotor blade, exposing these two tabs that will actually plug onto two ports. This will keep the arms tabbed into each other so that they don't pop out during transformation. Once this is tabbed in, we have now completed the rear end of the helicopter alt form. Once this is done, we're going to want to hinge these pieces out on both sides. They will snugly snap into place just like so. And then what you can do is flip out these bracket pieces and then proceed to unhinge the section of Drift's shins and completely separate them, folding them out much like Studio Series Dropkick. You're then going to want to hinge them backwards and rotate these bracket sections around just like so. We can then completely straighten out one side of Drift's helicopter form, and then we're going to want to flip this small gun section up via a pin and it will ratchet up by one click. We can then repeat the exact same process on the opposite side, so rotate this bracket section around just like so without hindering any of the clearance issues, and then once that is done, we can proceed to flip out and fold out half of the side of Drift's other leg, and then flip the gun section up once again via the pin until it ratchets into place. With this now done, we're going to want to turn our attention to the sides of Drift's helicopter form and rotate the thigh section just like so, whilst collapsing the knee joint, also like this. This will expose a tab that will later on plug into a slot on the rear end of the helicopter form. Repeat the same process on the opposite side, and now we're going to tab the two halves together via these translucent pegs. They will tab in at an angle which is actually accurate to the transformation. You're going to want to align them appropriately, and they will ever so gently tab into place, just securely enough so that we can now collapse the main helicopter cockpit onto the rest of this, completely securing the connection. Once you are left with something that looks like this, hinge it all the way up as close to the head as you possibly can. And now we're going to want to bring the majority of the cockpit down. As you can see, there is a large tab that will actually plug into a slot situated on the bed section of the helicopter. You're going to want to align these sections up by using the double joints, which help to aid the top section of the copter. So collapsing this down as much as you possibly can, applying enough firm pressure so that you can snap it into place. Once it is aligned, it will actually clip into positioning, and then it is just a matter of fact of aligning everything else appropriately. Once this is done, we now have the majority of the helicopter almost complete. We just need to add the finishing touches. Ensuring that these tabs have snapped into their original positionings, we can now turn our attention to the main rotor blade. You're going to want to straighten out these two katanas, which are actually fixed into place, and lift it up just like so. This will free the helicopter joint up, however it's still rather stiff on my copy. Once this is done, we can then take the two larger katana swords that we saw in robot mode, and these will actually form the rest of the rotor blade. There are various tabs and slots on both the tail rotor as well as the swords, which will complete the propeller look. Now this is completed, we can add the missile pods, and these tab onto either side in whatever way you so choose. They are a rather firm, snug fit, so you're going to want to apply a reasonable amount of pressure, ensuring that they clip on securely. Plug them onto both sides, and once this is done, we now have the helicopter fully transformed, and Drift is now in his helicopter alt form. Now, taking a look at Drift in his helicopter mode, this is almost just as strong as the robot mode. This is by far the best representation we've ever got for Drift's helicopter form, and completely blows away the original Voyager class Drift as part of the Age of Extinction toy line. This one is so much more accurate, and the helicopter looks extremely futuristic. I really like the black metallic paint that they've used for the majority of the sculpt. There are some hollow gaps throughout the helicopter, however it is a rather interesting transformation, so I can kind of understand how there is some hollow gaps all over the place. But this is due to the fact that the helicopter is actually quite large, whilst the robot mode of the figure is fairly small. The use of storing the katanas for the propeller is very convincing, and overall the helicopter mode really does tidy up fairly nicely. There is also loads of sculpted in detail throughout the sculpt, and under bright light you can really see them pop. The metallic black paint also looks really premium, and this particular helicopter definitely looks very alien and futuristic. As you can see towards the tail end there is also some really nice detailing, and I really like this back propeller section as it is unlike any helicopter that I've ever seen on any other Transformers figure. As you can see, the propeller doesn't rotate too freely, however this is probably just a problem on my particular copy. The helicopter can also balance extremely well on the bracket section, so there is no worry whatsoever of the helicopter being too back heavy and falling down. For a Studio Series Deluxe size comparison, just to see how big this figure really is in alt form, here he is next to Studio Series Bumblebee. As you can see from a fairly small deluxe figure in robot mode, it is actually quite a large helicopter form and almost to me looks as if though it is a small Voyager. This particular helicopter form looks great alongside Bumblebee, as this helicopter did actually help Bumblebee gain access into the KSI building back when Age of Extinction was released. So that is my review on the Transformers Studio Series Deluxe Class Drift based on his helicopter appearance. Personally, I definitely think that this is the best version of Drift to ever grace the Movieverse toy line. This particular figure is really good in both his robot mode and his helicopter form, and is by far the most convincing representation that we've ever got for an Age of Extinction Drift. The details as well as the movie accuracy is really well done, and I also think that the articulation is great. There is also enough variety of accessories for this particular figure in order for you to get him into some great posing, and it is really the detail that sets this figure apart from the previous Drift figures. This entire wave of Studio Series figures has been extremely detailed and very well done, and Drift is definitely no exception. Speaking of other figures in the range, I have completely reviewed the entire wave, so please feel free to check out some of those older reviews, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know down in the comment section below, and until my next video, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.